All right, so we're going to move to the AFC. We had two games on Saturday. We're going to start with the Browns and the Texans. This one started off just a little bit slow. Both teams had punts. Browns had a punt. And then big explosion there for both teams, 17-14, Houston. And then the Browns pretty much died. Two straight drives with pick sixes. They ended up losing to the Texans 45-14.
Yeah, this one's crazy, and this one is one that I had kind of marked as this one's going to be one of the better games, going to be one of the more competitive games. It started out that way, and so with that in mind, I went out to watch this game at a bar to get the kind of public feel, and there's actually a pretty good amount of Browns and Texans fans, but there were more Browns fans where we were at, and it was kind of crazy because it starts off there's a lot of cheering, and then it just starts to trail off, and by the time we leave, because we don't want to stay the whole time, we come back to catch the second half, and it's a completely different game. This one started pretty good. Punt. The defenses are showing out, then the Texans get a field goal, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to be competitive, but these two defenses are going to kind of hold each other down. Have some injury scares with Laremy Tunsil and Joel Bitonio. And then the Browns finally strike. They make it 7-3. The Texans then also get themselves a touchdown. It's 10-7. And you get 14-10, then 14-17. They start actually rolling, and I'm like, this is what I thought this game was going to be. These two teams are going to have this kind of battle. Joe Flacco was throwing deep touchdowns. CJ Stroud was throwing deep touchdowns. It was just a really good performance. And then they trade a few more punts, and the Texans score. They're up 10 at halftime. Things look a little, rough there. The Texans team with that offense, and their defense is good. It's not a great team to beat down 10 on. But the Browns seemingly this season have had the defense and the offense, especially this late season, to recover from that. And that did not happen. The Texans give them a door. They punt on their first drive, just 5 plays. They take up only about 3 minutes. Give the ball to the Browns. Browns have an easy opening to try to cut that 10-point deficit down. Then they throw a pick six, and it's 31-14. And then so obviously it's a pick six. They're going to get the ball right back. They have three plays, and then on the fourth one, they throw another pick six, and all of a sudden it is 38-14. And that's when you start to realize this is over. Then they turn it over on downs after that drive, and the Texans in 6 plays, 50 yards, roll down the field after they're getting the short position, score again. It's 45-14. That game is over. There's nothing else that happens. Turnover on downs again by the Browns. Texans go 3 and out. Don't matter. Browns turn it over again on downs. It just got out of hand super, super quickly. And it's something that I don't think we covered the Browns a whole lot since Flacco got there. But obviously he's had super impressive days. He threw for 300 yards again in this one. But he was 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions before this game started. So he's had a little bit of an interception issue here and there. In that Browns game, or in the Texans game last time, he threw some picks. They didn't really mean much. He threw them at the end of the half on some Hail Marys. But there was that issue of he's putting up all these yards, but he's occasionally a little too pick prone. And that one ends up getting really, really bad in this one as he throws those picks. And ultimately, I give a lot of credit to DeMeco Ryans in this one for the way he kept messing around on offense and coaching things to allow Myles Garrett to feel like he had room to do things. They would purposely leave things open, so Garrett would rush that way just to throw the play a different direction and leave Myles Garrett just completely off and nowhere to where he was almost useless to the play. He's also matched up against Laremy Tunsil a lot, which I think, Myles Garrett is a great defensive player, but Laremy Tunsil is an amazing offensive lineman, and he put Garrett in a clinic at some points this game. So obviously, major props to the rookie CJ Stroud. He almost might have had a perfect passer rating, 157.2. I don't remember exactly what the perfect one is, but that's also what Jordan Love ended up finishing with. So amazing game from CJ Stroud, amazingly coached game from DeMeco Ryans. The Texans just had an agenda. They came in, and I hate to say this, we don't get into too much of this on this show, but CJ Stroud in one playoff game against Deshaun Watson's current team, obviously Deshaun is injured, wiped away a lot of what Deshaun did in Houston. This is immediately a better performance than we saw a lot of from Watson when he was in Houston, and it's not to necessarily just to tear down Watson here, but more so, Stroud has just had a great season. Rookie quarterback, rookie head coach. They make the playoffs for the first, in each of their first seasons, and they win a playoff game against a tough defense, against a team who had a better record than them, but were a lower seed, and they will, they're going to be the lowest top seed remaining, so they'll be probably not at Houston again, depending on. I'm not sure they'll be at Houston at all because of who's left in the playoffs. So, but they handle business at their home turf, and they look like a threat to any other team. I mean, doing that, being able to dismantle that Browns defense, especially dismantling it from a coaching standpoint, I think the Texans have just proven themselves to be in a pretty scary position. And I said this in our NFC video. I was wrong on both those games. I'll be wrong on both the games today as well. I don't think I've ever gone 0 for 4 on a week of picks. Maybe I have. But this one was bad. I thought that it'd be competitive, and therefore the Browns would be able to squeak it out, and it was not. The Texans just came in and outcoached them, outplayed them, outdefended, outscored. This was a beatdown after once it was 17-14, the Texans did not look back, and the Browns did not score another point. So amazing game from Houston on this one.
Yeah, I mean, we say this a lot. I mean, what can you really say when it was still competitive at halftime? Like, obviously, coming out the half, Texans put themselves in a really good position scoring that last touchdown, so they go up 24-14. Then they get the ball at the half. It could have gone real bad real quick if they had scored right there. Because at least a field goal would have been up 2 scores now, and or just should say 2 touchdowns now. So like it could have been a lot worse when you think about it, but they didn't score there. But then Joe Flacco, they were having a really good drive, and then interception, taken all the way back for a touchdown. It's like, okay, it's not over yet. We'll come back. We'll be all right. Interception, return for a touchdown. I was like, well, it's over. Like, yeah, and they had, they had to really go for it. At that point, yeah, I'm not gonna like fault them because it's late third quarter. You're down 31-14. Like, they didn't really have much of a choice. Um, and maybe if you had, no, I was about to say Kareem Hunt. Maybe if you had Nick Chubb, like, there would have been a situation where you ran it, and because Kareem Hunt's still pretty good, but Nick Chubb at this point is the better running back. And despite not having all season, they had a really good season, all things considered. Like, going through Deshaun Watson, then DTR, PJ Walker, not Joe Flacco. The issue with Joe Flacco is, as great as he was in those games, interceptions, it showed its head here. Like, you can't throw 2 back-to-back pick sixes, expect to win. Like, it's just not going to happen. And at that point, the game really was over. Cleveland didn't score a single point in the second half, let alone after those interceptions. Like, it just it took all the breath out of this team. I think, to be honest with you, because even early on, when things were slow and they picked up real fast, all those touchdowns back to back to back to back, like, whenever Houston scored again, it did feel like Houston obviously was getting the better of them. Outside of the lead. So that was kind of just the one thing I was worried about with this team. Like, I figured the Browns would win this game because of the defense. Despite as good as the Houston Texans offense had been this year, as good as the team had been this year, I figured the defense would carry them to another win, as he had done so many times. And if you had Joe Flacco at least be somewhat comparable to what he was in those games during the season when he came in, they'd win. But the big issue is all those explosive plays. I mean, one of those touchdowns was a 76-yard touchdown pass. I mean, it was just like, you can't really expect to win when you allow explosive plays like that. You're not really getting to the quarterback. Myles Garrett isn't able to get home like he had been throughout the season. And then you have the 2 pick sixes. I mean, once you get to that point, there's not really much else you can do. Um, you're down 20 something points with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. Like, game's over. All the momentum was gone. Then they get another touchdown. Like, they got to the point where they put Davis Mills in just to get some reps. Like, there was. I feel like just because this game was on Saturday and it was the first game, and obviously the Texans and Browns aren't as big of fan bases, as big of brands as the Packers and Cowboys. This one isn't talked about as much. But I mean, this game was almost as bad as the Packers game with the Cowboys. I think just because the stage for the Cowboys and Packers is bigger, and we expect more of the Cowboys, and I think we probably expect it from the Browns. But still, pretty embarrassing. And they'll get their guys back next season, but definitely disappointing for them. And Texans, they'll be on the road this week. Depends on who they'll be playing, but they'll be having a good game. I expect too. So they definitely earned this one, first playoff win in a few years. Since that one win for Deshaun, definitely earned it.
Yeah, so from there, we're going to move down to the Miami Dolphins, visiting the Kansas City Chiefs in sub-zero temperatures, -26 is I can't believe what it felt like. At some points in the game, it was -8 degrees. The Dolphins, historically not great when it's cold. I mean, that's a very ESPN stat, but it is what it is. They don't perform super well when it's cold outside. That continued as they put up a whopping 7 points. This is an interesting one with both these games that we're covering here. The Browns, one of the NFL's best defenses this season, allows 45. Now, they didn't entirely allow that 45. 2 pick sixes don't count against the defense, but they still get some pretty easy touchdowns against them. And the Dolphins, one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL this season, aside from some late season faltering, completely falters here, puts up just 7 points as the Chiefs hold on to home court advantage or home field advantage and take the 26-7 victory over Miami. This one is rough. It's kind of the tale of the same stuff for the Dolphins. The run game can't get going. That's a big thing here, I think, in this type of cold game. You needed to see that run game come to life, and it wasn't that they were down too much for the run game to be useful. There's plenty of time where it could have been a big thing, but Raheem Mostert just got 33 yards. Devon Achane only got 9. Tua got 23. I think he honestly should have rushed more in this game. He had 3 carries for those 25 yards. He looked really good every time he ran. He just didn't do it often. He didn't pass super well. 20 for 39, about 200 yards, but he threw a pick, threw a TD. Just not a great game for the Dolphins. And this is something that I guess we didn't cover as much of here before getting into this. But the Dolphins' defense is like super beat up, and some of that came from late points in the season where they shouldn't have been getting beat up. Bradley Chubb, for example, was injured against the Ravens after they were already dead. There was no need to have Bradley Chubb still in. You don't want to take an embarrassing loss and then lose one of your better defenders. Xavier Howard is still out. And I think those injuries kind of all amounted. But we do this a lot on the show where we talk about what went wrong for the losing team. I can talk about what went right for the winning team. They had drops. The Chiefs had some drops. Travis Kelce had 2 big drops, but ultimately the Chiefs, we have been joking around about the whole season with their tomfoolery, they put that behind them. Patrick Mahomes, it does go 23 for 41. I mean, that's not a beautiful completion rate, but he gets a touchdown, and there's not that many drops. Some of it is just because of the style of it. Mecole Hardman doesn't really have any drops, but he does have lack of effort issues sometimes, where he just expects to get a flag or just kind of gives up on the run. Otherwise, though, Rashee Rice was able to get a really strong connection with Patrick Mahomes. His playoff debut as a rookie, he gets 130 yards and a touchdown. Isaiah Pacheco ran all over the Dolphins. Travis Kelce, despite his 2 big drops, still put up a 70-yard day. The Chiefs just had it together a little better. Their defense was good. They're able to hold off the Dolphins' run game. They tore up an injured Dolphins defense, but an injured Dolphins defense that still has, Jalen Ramsey. So we've got a lot of benefit there. At one point in this game, I know the Chiefs ended up having a touchdown called back, but that didn't really end up doing much anyway. It ends up being a 26-7 victory. Again, I was wrong on this one. I kind of expected that I would end up being wrong. So this one didn't shock me too much. I just really wanted the Dolphins to pull this one through. But I did think it would be a battle of tomfoolery, and the Dolphins kept their tomfoolery up. The Chiefs came in and played a playoff game, clearly a little more prepared to be in a playoff scenario, despite the Dolphins having people like Jalen Ramsey or like Tyreek Hill. Just did not go well for them. And now that's going to put a lot of question on the Dolphins, a lot of strain. Now, last year they made the playoffs with Mike McDaniel, but they have to play Skylar Thompson, and I think that one's kind of going to be excused. Things went wrong, but there's too many injuries. Tua had a lot of health issues last season. This year we have a fully healthy offense for the Dolphins, and then they get here again, and the defense is kind of beat up. Obviously, I think Mike McDaniel has job security, but Tua is definitely going to have some scrutiny on him. He just threw some bad passes, kept overthrowing people. They also called so many lateral screen passes, and not only did they keep calling them at the worst times, but every time they called one, Tua threw the ball 3 feet in front of whoever was trying to get the lateral pass. So it just wasn't working out either. This game, as somebody who was hoping for the Dolphins to win, who was supporting the Dolphins, was extremely, extremely frustrating because the Dolphins did everything they could to beat themselves and take themselves out of this game. There's plenty of opportunity for them to try to get it together and at least keep pace with the Chiefs early on. I mean, the Chiefs score on their first drive at 7-0, but it takes a little bit before it becomes 10-0, and then it's 10-7 and 7-13. You've got a pretty easy opening to try to make it. And it's only 7-16 at halftime. It's not ideal, but there's room to do things, especially because the Dolphins are going to start with the ball. They go 3 and out, and then the Chiefs get another field goal, and they get a touchdown to make it 26, and that's it. They just kind of ride it out from there. Chiefs fumble towards the end of the game, but doesn't really do anything. Dolphins turn it over on downs a few times. It's just this was just a if you're a Dolphins fan that was watching this game, this one had to hurt. I mean, it just sucks. It was just a lot of bad football being put on display, and maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's the unfortunate having to go play in Arrowhead Stadium. It's a hard place to play for an away team, especially against a proven team like this Kansas City Chiefs team. But ultimately, the Dolphins just played a frustrating football game and came out of this one with a loss. Chiefs advance and have the potential to host somebody depending on who wins these next games, or they could be going to go visit the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. So we'll see kind of where that goes. But the Dolphins, no matter what, would have most likely been traveling on so yeah.
Yeah, you talked about like job security here, and I think we're going to start to have some uncomfortable conversations with the Dolphins. Last year again they were pretty good early on. They faltered a little bit later in the season. They had to go face Buffalo, almost beat them with Skylar Thompson, like you said. So we're not really going to hold that against them there. Tua obviously had concussions last year. That things were going on. This year he played the whole season. The other side of the ball was really what had more issues with the defensive injuries. And I was going to say Tyreek Hill, missing game here and there. Jalen Waddle missing time, or Raheem Mostert obviously missing time. They're all back for this one. Offense didn't do much. I said, when I made my pick, like obviously I think Kansas City had the advantage, being in the cold. I didn't think that automatically meant that the Dolphins would be garbage. Tyreek Hill spent majority of his career there. It's not like they would just completely falter like they've never played in cold weather before. But clearly the offense just wasn't going. Tua, he had a costly pick early on, let the Chiefs get a field goal off of that. And you did mention like that first drive, the Chiefs got a touchdown. They came out like it was like that looked like one of the older Chiefs teams that we've seen. And you know, even last year's team, like that was a good Chiefs drive there. Like, and obviously Travis had a drop. He had some drops here and there, but like that was a pretty good drive for them to start off with. They didn't have any issue throwing the ball. They just came through the ball. Isaiah Pacheco, he was running the ball well, early on. So like they didn't really show that they had any fear of what was going to happen. And Dolphins, on the other hand, they just never looked right. Like outside of that big play to Tyreek, like there was nothing really going for him this whole game. Um, and you can bring up, penalties. Obviously, penalties they favored the Chiefs. Like that's just kind of how. That's just that is what it is. Like to be honest with you, like I've never really seen a game over the past few years. Other than the really since that offsides in the AFC Championship game all the way back in like 2018, his first year, Mahomes, against the Patriots, like Chiefs have generally gotten the benefit of that with penalties. And what really killed them, at the end there was the intentional grounding on one play, and then the next play was a roughing the passer. It's like game over. Right? There was no way they're going to come back from that after they scored that touchdown. But that's not the reason why they won. They were simply just a better team. The Dolphins' offense was essentially non-existent. Like it would have been one thing. Again, I said this about the Cowboys game. Would have been one thing if they had kept scoring along with them, and it was going to be a shootout, which I never thought it would be. But your offense basically doing nothing the entire game, like that's just that's just really inexcusable. Again, there's going to be scrutiny around Tua, obviously for his performance. Mike McDaniel, I don't think we talked about this with Nick Sirianni and the Eagles. You make the playoffs every year, you're going to get fired. Like Mike McDaniel, I don't see them firing him, but I will say, like they mess around and get one and done in the playoffs again next year, or they maybe miss the playoffs. Like they're going to have conversations. Like let's be real, because I think it feels like there's a much shorter leash on coaches now. Um, growing up, I think a lot of mediocre coaches. He's not mediocre. Don't get me wrong, but I think mediocre coaches in The NFL lasted longer, I feel like, when we were younger. Now, even if you're a good coach like Mike McDaniel, like if you don't have success the way they expect you to with the team that you have, they'll get rid of you. So, not saying that's what's going to happen, but obviously they're going to have to start answering some questions now. 2 years in a row, obviously last year with a backup, but 2 years in a row, they have a good team, one and done in the playoffs. Happens a third time, I wouldn't be surprised. So, again, not to make this all about just the Dolphins. The Chiefs played a good game, but I didn't really expect this wasn't all that surprising to me. I didn't expect the Dolphins offense to come out and put up 7 points, but I did expect the Chiefs to be just better in this one, and they were. They move on.